Now, the minute our fairness button has gone off, whether you are 2 years old or 200 years old, you are now not in a place where you will be able to contribute positively to what's going on. And because we've been taught this arbitration mentality, because that's the way our society runs, you've then got to start figuring out how to get revenge, what you're going to do to adjust the balance, and all the rest of it. So for me, it's really interesting. Now, the biggest mistake that we make is believing that there are people on this planet called children. Because the minute we decide that there are a group of people called children, we have now attributed to them somehow less knowledge of what's fair. And for me, what's been really interesting doing the work that we've done, I mean, we have been on the cutting edge of criminality, gang work, violent youth, violent adults. What's really interesting is the people who are causing you the most problems are the people that know the solutions. And yet we are in our society totally scared to give voice to those people, because it's how do you give them a voice without appearing to condone, and there's a real fear of that. That means we can't talk about these things. But if you want to know how to sort out something that's going badly wrong in a community, you need to ask the people that are bumping up against it the most. So in this paradigm, what you actually do is you view everything that anyone does in your community, you simply view as feedback, because that's all it is. So you stop looking at it as a behaviour that needs to be managed, and you say, that's feedback. So I was in the school once, and a teacher said, yes, but, if you've got a kid and, he comes in the wrong uniform every day, and you've told him, time and time again, and, what have you got left? You can only give him more detentions or whatever. What are you going to do? And I said, maybe you want to find out what it is about wearing a uniform that he can't cope with. I thought, well, what do you mean? Well, it might be that he disagrees that your community should have a uniform. Now, maybe he doesn't have the power to make that decision, right? And maybe there's a whole nother compassionate conversation about how decisions are made in the school. That's one thing. Or you might actually find out that this kid's got a stepdad that beats him and kicks him out every morning before he's got time to get dressed. Well, you might find out he's got a mother that's dependent on alcohol and no one's doing any washing for him. You have to see all these things as feedback. They are the conflict, the behaviours that come out of the conflict, that come out of the disputes, is your greatest learning resource for creating the space in which everyone feels comfortable. So what we came up with, so you can see, this didn't just come out of nowhere. And then there's something else for me about, if we talk about this idea that, we do have this or else language, is it really satisfactory that then we can run a school and say, but we're nice to you on a Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock? On a Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, we do circle time and we're nice to you then. It's too confusing. It doesn't sit, it still says that it's still a huge manipulation. So we came up with something, because what we developed overall was we developed something called a dialogue roadmap. It takes 2 days, but we came up with something called the dialogue roadmap. And the dialogue roadmap is a tool that can engage any person who is resistant, hostile, violent, aggressive, or simply just doesn't want to engage. It's a tool. It's a tool for engagement, because actually we never got taught how to have a dialogue. Everything that we learn about conversation sits in debate. It sits in the idea that at some point, someone is going to judge me or judge what I do. So what I need to do is I need to put my best case forward every time. So I must never reveal my vulnerability or the things that I feel weak about. So, of course, we actually don't have dialogues at all in our society. I mean, take Parliament. You know, take the examples that people see. You get an opposition. I mean, I know we've come into a different time and fingers crossed and all the rest of it. But you get an opposition that oppose for the sake of opposing. When do we ever see them say, well, let's just sit down and have a chat about this? You think that, I think apple, you think banana, you know. So we created this dialogue roadmap, and part of it was a need for safety for us, because we may go to places where people have a gun, and the last thing I want to do is upset them. But it was a tool that was, how do you engage the most resistant people? Because unless they are engaged, if they feel marginalised or their fairness buttons have gone off, you don't actually have the community you think you have. And then from that, what we did for schools was we developed a product called Justice from the Heart. And the idea of justice from the heart is that in all of those stories that you had where your fairness button had gone off, if we'd had the time to examine, you would have been able to tell me what's fair, what would have been a fair outcome. And any child can do that too. So you would have been able to find the justice. So every human being has an inbuilt justice system, and we don't actually need an external third party who's not aware of all the facts or what I've been through in my life and all my experiences to tell me what justice is. Then what we need is the process to have the dialogue, because what you think is just and what you think is just may be at odds with each other, so that we can reach that middle ground.